So, welcome to today's episode of Disrupting Doctors' Careers. And I really love it when we have guests on our podcast who have successfully married medicine with creativity. The sky's the limit, right? And so I'm really proud to introduce to you. You may have met her already because she is her own podcast host and she's got this really strong, incredible personal brand. It's Rolake Ojo, who is a healthcare graphic designer and brand strategist. She's also a podcast host for a brand new doctor, and she is going to really share her own journey, how she moved and transitioned over from being a doctor to the designer that she is today, and really making a huge impact in not only the business world, but also the medical world, in sharing her knowledge, her expertise, her network, and inspiring so many people and doctors across the world. So it's a real pleasure to have you on this podcast.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much for
joining.
having me. It's such a pleasure, honestly. Thank you.
No worries. So, I mean, I know that, from our recent conversation that
hmm
you actually had been to a Medic Footprints event in the past.
Yes.
And so your journey with us started some time ago, like a lot of doctors we see actually on this podcast. And so it's always a real pleasure to see how you have designed your own career to make it fit your own passions and goals. So I'd love to hear from you. And I always like to start from the beginning, the entry point into medicine. Why
Mm.
did you choose medicine as a career to start with?
Yes. So why I went into medicine, I think this will resonate with a lot of people. You know what I find interesting actually when we talk about our career kind of pathway and everything, I think for a lot of doctors it starts in a really similar way, that perhaps they knew people or their mom or dad was a doctor, and surprise surprise, that's like the same thing for me as well. So I grew up in a pretty medical family, and medicine was kind of always the thing. And I think particularly for me, I had a really strong desire to kind of prove myself and prove that I was intelligent, because I had early experiences for me in school when we first came to the UK years ago in the 90s. And that really made me feel kind of less than. And so medicine kind of presented a perfect way for me to prove the opposite and prove that I was capable. So that was kind of why I went into medicine. I think it became pretty clear to me when I got to medical school. I remember even getting my A-level results and knowing that I'd kind of reached the requirement for the conditional offer that they give you, and being really underwhelmed, I suppose is the word, or it felt really anticlimactic.
Wow, so getting the results and being like, you got into medical school, and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think you build up towards going, for something, or you focus on a goal so much that you maybe forget why you're doing it.
yeah, when you get to that goal, you're like, wait, what was this for
Yeah,
again?
why do I want to do this?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and medical school for me was, I know, and I say this all the time, it sounds ridiculous, but it was like slowly dawning on me that I would actually have to become a doctor at the end of it. It wasn't just about, here's another test, here's another exam where you can prove that you're smart enough. It's not just that, it's actually a vocation, and it's
Mm.
a really important decision to make. And I just don't think me at 16 years old was not focused or doing it for the right reasons at that time.
No, I mean, that echoes, I think, a lot of people, including myself. I mean, for me, it was very much, you're going to be a doctor of
Yeah.
medicine or a lawyer. You're
Yeah.
clever, do one of the two and you'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that, even from getting your A-level results, you weren't
Yeah.
totally sold, but you went down that pathway. And at what point did you say, actually, I'm going to step outside of this because there's more for me?
Yes, I that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure what the specific moment was. I think as I say, it was kind of slowly dawning on me as I was going through medical school. The more clinical things were becoming, where it's like, wow, I don't just get to sit in lectures all day and
Mm,
learn this stuff. It's interesting, but like when it comes to the application, I don't know if this is how I want to use this knowledge that I have right now. Um, I do remember in medical school having a pretty distinct thought because I used to doodle all of the time when I was in lectures. I would sit and it would help me to it would help me to stay awake. We were talking about how it was basically a 9 to 5 job being in medical school.
Yep. Full
Um
time.
yeah,
Full time studying.
it's full-time studying and then you go
Yeah.
home and you study some more.
Yeah.
And yeah, to keep me awake in lectures, I would doodle all of the time. And there was a point, I think I was probably in my third or my fourth year. I remember thinking, I think creativity is gonna save me from doing this forever. That's
Yeah.
the thought that I had then. But I
Were you,
obviously
I was going
kept
to say, like, were
going.
you creative before you went into medicine?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
what were you
Yeah.
doing?
I was drawing a lot. I was into textiles. I mean, I remember I like used to like designing things that to make like bags and things like that. I would create things. I loved drawing. I loved using oil pastels, watercolors. I was very much into just pattern design in general. I think in particular, I loved I think when I was like maybe I was 11 or something, I saw henna or I saw Mendy designs for the first time ever, and I thought it was incredible. And I used to love drawing those kinds of things. So yeah, just it was always a part of my life, and with my sisters as well. We always loved singing and dancing, all of that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I always thought that was kind of normal for everyone to do at home, to just always be
Mm-hmm.
making or doing or singing or something like that. And I realized like maybe not for everybody, but different people have different ways of expressing their creativity, I suppose.
It's interesting because I've got two small children, right? And I see their creativity, like
Mm,
innate creativity, the ability to fantasize or reenact or even just create something from nothing,
yeah,
artwork, all of those things that as parents, like they always encourage. And then like
yeah.
what's valued in the world of work tends to be quite different,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
In that
Yeah.
sense. So, I see a lot of people, especially medics, who have this kind of hidden background of
Mm,
creativity that unfortunately does get stripped away from them because there's not much place for it in traditional healthcare, right? Outside of
yeah.
entrepreneurship innovation, which is another story in itself. There's not enough emphasis on that in healthcare in a
Yeah.
traditional clinical role, but that's another thing. But so it's really incredible that you had this skill set, and even I say despite, but even whilst you were going down the medical pathway, it was still calling to you, saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, do something with me." So I guess my question is like, at what point did you say, right, I am gonna
I'm
see whether
gonna
I can
go.
make something work
Yeah.
from my passion?
Yeah. It did take me a really long time. I finished medical school. I did my F1, my F2, I did an F3 even. And it took me that time to kind of build the courage because I think a big part of being enmeshed in medicine is just being kind of around similar thoughts. It becomes a bit of an echo chamber, and
Mm.
it's hard for you to move outside of that when everybody else is going in the same kind of direction. I think that's just normal with human nature, and also just a lot of um the rhetoric out there is, oh, you've already come this far in medical school, you should finish medical school. I did want to finish, I did want to have a degree, and I would say that was completely my choice. But then it's like, okay, now you finished, you have to stay here and you have to do foundation years, or else you'll never be able to practice medicine again if you decide you want to come back again. So I think I was very fear driven from that point onwards. And
Mm.
there was a point, I remember in foundation in my F3 year, I actually I applied for GP because I guess it was the only kind of lifestyle, not even specialty, but just the lifestyle around it that I could possibly see myself in. And even doing that, I remember, I'd finish F1 and F2. It's like, okay, the theory is that you're free now, but then people would be like, oh, but you really should finish something,
Yes,
right?
that finish something rhetoric.
Yeah,
That as
finish
I hear
something.
I hear that from my mum all that, thinking back to the past when I was jumping from surgery to urology to
Mm.
occupational medicine. When are you going to finish something? Everyone's finishing things, but you're not
Yeah,
finishing. You're not a finisher.
as if careers are things that you can finish
Finish.
anyway.
Exactly. Exactly. I just wanted to bring you back actually to the point where
I went to,
obviously no when
mm,
you mentioned the importance of being around, especially when you've got you're fear driven to stay where you are because it's comfortable, because it's the thing
mm,
that you know, it's because of the thing that everyone else around you knows, so they're saying don't do it.
yeah,
Right. And I'm bringing that up in particular because this is one of the biggest challenges
mm-hmm,
that doctors face beyond their own internal mindset and their own internal narratives. People around you are saying, hey, don't do it because you might as well just
yeah,
finish this and then you'll be fine. Because a lot of those people haven't had what you're looking for.
yeah,
You know, that they aren't in branding. They haven't worked outside of the healthcare system, and they've been driven by the same fear that you've been driven by. And
mm-hmm,
so the mentors around you are saying sharing the narrative that you should stick to what you're doing now. And so I go back to you on, like, how did you break free from
mm-hmm.
those narratives that would have otherwise kept you in that healthcare system?
Yeah, I think I really have to cast my mind back to what helped me to make the leap. To be honest with you, there was a bit of a leap, but I would say it happened in kind of small and incremental steps.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is important to highlight that, I didn't just wake up one day and say, screw this, I'm gonna go and like I'm gonna go to design school and become a designer instead. It took me years to actually take that step. I had to kind of slowly dip my feet into the water. And I think maybe a braver person than me would make that kind of decision. But I understand that we're really risk averse people, a lot of the time, who go into medicine. We've been brought up on a rhetoric of stability, particularly if you come from an immigrant family like I do.
Mm-hmm.
Stability is important. Stability is everything. And so it's not easy to make that decision that you're going to one day quit and do something else. So my first choice, the first thing that I decided to do, was, I guess F3 was like a small rebellion in and of itself. Instead of going straight into another kind of training program, going straight into GP, I took that year. I still worked pretty much 9 to 5, if not more than that, because I was afraid. But then I decided I applied to do a language assistant. How do you describe this? Basically, it's a kind of an exchange program that the British Council does with France. And so I took 6 months out to be a language assistant in France. And so I said to myself, okay, during this 6 month period of time, I'll apply for a GP post and I'll take 6 months out to decide on whether I want to take it and also explore my other options, enjoy France, enjoy kind of having just a bit more time to myself, practice my French. And then at the end of it, I'll make a choice. So I think that was kind of my kind of safe way of taking a risk, if you like. So that was the first thing that I did. And I would encourage,
Yeah. I just wanted to jump in on
yeah,
that one
yeah,
because
sure.
I think it's this is highlighted how important everyone's got their different risk profile, right, and their
Mm-hmm.
tastes. And so you've just described that you had a process, you went through a certain process. It may not
Yeah,
all have been completely planned, but you gave yourself that space and that time that was comfortable for you, that didn't put yourself too much into your freak
yeah.
zone, that led you to a decision that you felt was right for you at the time. Because I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people think, oh, I've got to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about the right decision. Like, you can only make the best decision you can make at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You can also change and will absolutely change as you grow
Yeah.
in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of doctors get held back by that. Oh, if I leave traditional clinical medicine, that's it. And if it goes wrong, I'll be on the streets and destitute. And the reason why they fear that is because actually that story is still told.
Yeah.
Even when I was literally like 18 years ago, I was told that. And like, I've never met one out of the tens of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of doctors that have
Mm.
been through medic footprints, not one has said, I ended up unemployed as a result of leaving my job. But I
Mm,
know doctors now that have been made unemployed from their clinical jobs. GP, hello.
that's
So, I
crazy.
mean, just going back to you and your process,
Mm,
again, like the rhetoric of stability was another thing that really, um, yeah, it just really put a light bulb over my head.
mm,
Was because yeah, a lot of doctors are worried that moving and changing careers will mean that loss of stability.
yeah,
So I'd love to hear from you in your process and
yeah.
taking that a bit of a sabbatical. Um, did the definition of stability change for you that then led you to then make choices as to whether to retrain in a different area, etc., etc.? And yeah, the living of, is this really going to be the end of my
Mm.
life because I'm leaving medicine? And yeah, I'd love to hear that if you remember it.
That I think that's a really good question because the truth is, I don't think that my definition of stability changed. I
Mm-hmm.
think that rather where I what I thought could contribute to stability or my locus of control over stability changed. So in the past, I thought medicine would give me stability, but I
Mm-hmm.
slowly developed confidence within myself to create stability for myself and believe that I could fend for myself. I could look after myself no matter what situation I was thrown into. That doesn't come immediately. And you have to, like I said, I did this incrementally. I went from thinking my steady paycheck was the only way for me to have stability to now working and, contracting and finding my own clients and believing that I can create stability myself over a really long period of time. Um, but you have to kind of I think you have to be able to kind of dip your feet into it first of all. And like I said, my my version of my version of kind of exploring outside of the bounds of what I thought traditional stability was still finding, a stable kind of job, if you like, for 6 months. But I guess the point was that this was in a completely different environment. The rules around it had completely changed. I was being paid a different amount of money. I had to think and plan in different kinds of ways. So it kind of slowly nudged me in that direction, in the direction that I'm in now, where I had to kind of think on my feet a little bit more about how I could look after myself outside of the paycheck that I was used to having already. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you also proved to yourself that it's doable.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point, is that you more than anything, this I feel like your personal journey in your career is it's like a it's like a process of you proving to yourself that you are capable of anything that you set your mind to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of doctors are, but it's really the mindset, it's the fear, it's all those
Mm,
narratives that are holding a lot of doctors back. And I would echo everything. It's like whatever you're held back by, just create a program for yourself or a process for yourself
yeah.
that gives you that safety net that you feel like you need to
Mm,
actually go and do it, because it's risk mitigation at the end of the
yeah.
day. And you could literally sit down, write it down, saying, if this happens, then I'll do this, or if this
Yeah.
happens, then I'll do this. And I'm going to give myself this specific time frame, and I've got these backup plans, plan A, plan B, plan C, whatever it is.
Mm,
And I do see a lot of doctors that do that and hardly ever do come back from it. I know like literally a handful of doctors over the years who have come back into clinical medicine, but with joy, not
mm,
with, oh, it failed narrative. Well, that's what they tell me anyway. Like it's because actually they missed clinical medicine and they really enjoyed it and they want to go back and they enjoy it more as a result. And they've benefited from the learnings that they've taken from, the other sectors they've worked in, which is beneficial to healthcare in itself.
mm-hmm.
So it's basically win-win experience for a lot of people. But I just wanted to jump forward into, yeah, like so you studied, right?
Yeah.
And then how did you end up working for yourself? Because that itself is
Mm-hmm.
skill.
Yeah. So
and not exactly the easiest thing in the world to get started. But I'd love to hear, like, how did you get on with that process
yeah.
and rebranding yourself in that process?
Yeah, this is this is a work in progress, let's say. This is I always start by saying that I'm not the finished product at all. And I think you kind of have to rejoice in that, to be honest with you, because I think it's not a great thing if you ever believe that you are the finished product. And so where I started from in medicine, I like I said, I went to France for a time. I came back, I worked as a project manager. Just to give you a rundown of other things that I've done until I got to this point. I worked as a project manager for a time at a tech company because I figured that was the next decision, that it seemed like the best choice at that time for me. And then moving from there, I decided to work with my sister who owned a dental practice. So I was managing the business side of the dental practice during that time. And that was really where I was able to kind of put together what I'd been learning about myself through the process of trying different things. Because I guess before I tell you about what I'm doing now, I think it's important to highlight that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't gone through all of these steps and I hadn't been
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to what I was learning about myself and what I was learning about the world and putting that together to figure out what my purpose was, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And at each one of these stages, I was kind of, as I say, building confidence in myself, and just building up a picture of what mattered to me most. And it really became clear to me working with my sister that being creative in my work was really important. Also, autonomy in my work was really, really important. Obviously, she's my sister and she trusted me, and technically I guess she was my boss, but she gave me a lot of autonomy with the role and trusted me to be able to carry that out, and I flourished in that. So putting those two things together and realizing that whenever I wanted to solve a problem, I would try to do that as creatively as I could, and seeing the effect it had on patients, on their experience, and how we were able to differentiate ourselves from other dental practices up and down the road because they weren't thinking in the same kind of way. It really I had a kind of light bulb moment when I realized that design is so, so important. This is always something that I cared about, creativity and design, but I saw the proof in the pudding was in the pudding that it was actually a really important thing for patients' experiences and also for how well the business was doing as well. So that's when I decided that I wanted to go to design school. And so I went to design school. It's probably one of the most difficult things that I've done. And I guess for me, as I said, because I'd done that kind of work of thinking about my values and what was important to me, I'd been paying attention. I knew that autonomy was the most kind of important thing for me. It's not to say that I would never consider having a job or working for somebody else again, but I suppose there's a difference when you are carving a path as opposed to like following a path, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you decide that you're doing a job, even if you are doing a job, you are working in the NHS or whatever, it's to fulfill your own purposes rather than to fulfill somebody else's, essentially.
Yeah. And there's a
Yeah.
lot more depth to that, isn't there? There's a lot more meaning in that. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
more, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would really, yeah, what you just said really resonates with a lot of people because autonomy is one of the things that a lot of doctors feel is lost
Yeah,
from healthcare, lost from their practice in healthcare. So a lot more doctors who are leaning more towards preventative medicine, which, as someone pointed out to me the other day, medicine is more about tackling diseases rather than preventing them. So actually,
absolutely.
are we all in the right profession? But is that the autonomy to say this is how I feel that medicine should be practiced? This is how I feel the system should run. Like all of those points that we don't really have much control over in a traditional clinical role. So yeah, no, I see because I identify with that because as I've grown over the years, I recognize how important autonomy
Mm-hmm.
is for me and not having to answer to anyone but myself, whilst also taking 100% responsibility for that.
Yeah.
And again, like going back into traditional healthcare settings, you have a lot of the responsibility, but not enough autonomy to match it. And
Yes.
that can be really, really challenging.
Yeah.
Um, so just being mindful of the time, I'd love to hear, I mean, now that you've got this, career that you've developed for yourself and you've developed your own brand, you've got autonomy in what you'll do, you're working with some really impactful, and you're still working in healthcare in that sense that you've
Yeah.
brought design to healthcare, which is such an important niche. What would you advise for doctors who do have that creative, not, I wasn't going to say streak, but who are creatives
Mm.
and really want to explore how they can best marry medicine and or healthcare plus creativity? What tips or advice would you give to help them really start on that career path?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think this is something that I'm still exploring myself through the podcast. It's something that I like to talk about a lot on Brand New Doctor as well. I like to kind of probe people's ideas on creativity because I suppose in a sense the podcast is kind of a bit of therapy for me, if you like, where I can kind of reckon with things that were perhaps difficult or troubling to me when I was a doctor, and being a creative or feeling like I was a creative trapped in a doctor's body, if you like, was definitely something that I struggled with. The solution that I found was leaving, but I don't think that works. I don't want to prescribe that for everybody. I think and I really try not to be too prescriptive with things because I think we get enough of that in medicine. But in terms of like advice for exploring your own creativity, I think it's important to first of all look at your creativity like a practice, I would say. um I think that it's really important to realize that creativity isn't just about inspiration just striking you, because if you leave it, and I mean it does do that oftentimes. I think that's how a lot of people have experienced creativity. But the trouble is when you are working a really busy job that is really, really demanding, and your head is always in that space of kind of fighting fires, you're feeling really below the line all of the time. It is really, really hard for you to feel creative in that space. And so you might even start to doubt yourself as a creative. You go into it thinking, I'm creative, I like doing these things. And then, you look at yourself and it's like, I haven't picked up a paintbrush in 2 years. Am I actually creative? I haven't had a creative thought, or I haven't, inspiration hasn't struck me in this period of time. And I think that can be really destabilizing for your identity. And so that's why I say it's important to look at your creativity as a practice where you carve out the time for it and you are consistent with it as well. Because you'll find that actually creativity doesn't just have to be something that strikes you when you feel like it. It can be something that you can nurture and that you can build towards yourself. You don't have to depend on the muses or the gods or whatever it is that you think feeds you that idea. It is something that you can build up in yourself. So I would recommend that for people who consider themselves creative. I would recommend it for people who don't think of themselves as creative in the traditional sense. If there is something that you a kind of a hobby or some kind of outlet for you that is hard for you to do because of it's hard for you to find the motivation to do with your difficult job or your busy time schedule and everything, treat it as a practice rather than the thing that you do when you feel like it, because then it will really quickly fall to the wayside and then you wouldn't even believe that it's something that is a part of who you are anymore.
Absolutely. As you said, it's about carving out that time, no matter how small it is. It's small amounts of time consistently.
Yeah.
And as you said, treating it as a practice and like continually nurturing it like a child,
Yeah,
really.
like a
Like you
child.
have to give it that time. But similar to you, I wasn't able really to truly reconnect with my creativity until I actually stepped out of
Yeah.
the wrong environment and put myself in the right environment. But
Mm.
even then, there's still that actually, am I really in touch with my deepest creativity?
Mm.
Especially running a business where you're kind of more dealing with the admin and the numbers and the non-creative parts of it
Yeah, of
than the
course.
creative parts of it. But yeah, and it's interesting because marrying music and creativity is such an important skill set for anyone to have, and for those people that do have a creative background, like, this is your time,
Mm.
because you've heard about the creator economy, right? It's called that for a reason, because there's
Yeah.
money to be made if you are a creator, especially being a medic in writing and content in media and SEO. There's so much you can do. One of our fellows, GP,
Mm-hmm.
he was looking to get into pharma. Very quickly he realized that his love was not in pharma. A lot of doctors think, oh, do pharma, consulting, or health tech. What are those three things? Because
Yeah.
that's what everyone seems to do. But realistically, a lot of people are just saying and doing what is the thing to do, right? What the herd seems to do. But the reality, there are so many other things out there. Anyway, we managed to uncover, like, what are you beyond being a GP?
Mm-hmm.
How can we help you stand out to who you are? Or who were you before you even came into medicine? And he said, oh, I love music. And then next thing I know, this guy is on LinkedIn on a fairly daily basis, created this whole niche of music health tech that I never knew existed, opened up all these doors in the UK and overseas. And basically, he's carved out and created this niche for himself as a music health tech advisor, and opened up so many
Amazing.
opportunities and doors doing it like that, because he's got a very specific niche
Mm-hmm.
that just hasn't really existed.
Yeah.
And so whenever people come across him, especially being music and or health related, because there is actually a huge industry that need his services, then he's like one of the very few, if not only. And they're like, well, we can't go to anyone else, can we? So it's and also, like, this is from our Doctors in Industry Fellowship. It's like you have to go through a process, as you just described. You have to go through a process of your own to get to where you are today. And even that is part of a process to get to where you're going to be the next few years and the next few years.
Exactly.
Right. And making the mistakes, reflecting, doing the doing. Because a lot of people will say, I'm going to think about it. And then you end up thinking about it forever, and you just never will know because you haven't done anything. Like, actually doing something. It may not
It's
be
really
the
important.
right thing, but it's something that starts you on that path.
Mm-hmm.
And that will get you to where you want to go, as long as you have some clarity on where you're going. When I say clarity, you don't need to know the finished article of what it is, but you've got to have at least a sense of what you're looking to leave behind and what you're looking to embrace.
Yeah.
That I feel is enough, because a lot of people are like, I don't know what career I want to do. That doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, I always say that it's important for you to have direction, but it's not as important for you to know the destination. Yeah. I think it's really important to make the distinction between those two things, because in medicine will teach you that you need to know where you're going before you set off. And that way of thinking maybe applies to, real life journeys, but when we're talking about our career journeys that go on for much longer in our lives, you can't possibly predict the future, and you have to really break free of that way of thinking. It's not easy, but really just staying present with the decision that's in front of you is the most important thing, and just taking the next step that's necessary is all you really have to do.
100%. Well, okay. Thank you so much for your time today, your
Yeah.
insights, your wisdom, your knowledge, your journey, and everything that you're doing in this space. It's incredible. And if you are going to be looking at Rolake, definitely go and listen to her podcast, Brand New Doctor. How else can people get hold of you?
Yes, you can get hold of me through my website, which is rolakeojo.com. Also, you can see more of my design work, my branding work at anmatter.com. And yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn. So I'm wherever you want. You can come find me.
Brilliant. And to be fair, you are not the first designer on this podcast. We
Mm.
also had a designer actually went near to when we started it, who was in interior design.
Oh, wow.
So it's great to see more and more doctors who are getting into design work. Even before that, I knew a doctor who got into car design. You know,
Wow.
it's incredible what's out there. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be health tech consulting or pharma, guys. There's a
No,
lot
it's
more out
true. I
there.
think to your point about that, actually, the last thing I'll say is that we have to remember that we all got into medicine because we were told that smart people do medicine
Hmm.
and or they do law, or they do engineering, whatever it is. But beyond that choice, and you've gotten to this point because of that lie that was told to you that's the route you should take. You have to then use that same logic and be like, well, it doesn't make sense that just because I'm smart and I'm a doctor, I should go into one of these three fields. You could end
Yeah,
up in exactly the same position. So you really have to
exactly.
be true to yourself and figure out what's right for you.
Be true to yourself, but I should like to challenge you on that because I mean you say it's a lie, but realistically it's what people were told at that time, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
I
like if
think,
you want a stable career,
yeah,
do one of these professions, law, medicine, accountancy, and you'll be set for life,
I
right?
think the lie is that it's right for everybody who's got the grades for it.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
not right for
It's
everyone.
Yeah, but I don't think it's an intentional, as in
No,
it's like
it's
at the end of the day, like our parents, people around us, they're doing what they think is best. Just
mhm.
like the people who, if you're in healthcare and you're looking to leave, they're telling you what they genuinely think is best because that's all they know.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference there. Like, everyone generally, especially if you're asking them for advice, they do want the best for
Hmm.
you. Most people, not everyone, but most people. But if their knowledge is limited on what you're asking them, you need to go and find people who are doing what you want
You
to
need to
do.
surround yourself with
Around, yes,
different kinds of people. Maybe the word isn't lie, but it's a story at least.
it's the
And
stories.
you have to find other stories that
I
actually
always say
resonate with
you
you.
need to brainwash yourself. You're already
Hmm.
brainwashed into a certain way of thinking that suits your current career situation. So you need to then go and reprogram and brainwash yourself again
Hmm.
to then pursue the career or the lifestyle to achieve that lifestyle that you want. And as Rolake has described, it is about consistently and continually surrounding yourself with the people that are doing it, not just saying it, they're doing it and they're living it. So you end up speaking like them, talking like them, having the friends they have, having the connections they have. It's called networking. It's called community, and I know it's like, oh, not networking, but yeah, this is why this is such an important part of your journey. And
Absolutely.
again, if you're someone who recognizes and values that as an important part of your journey, don't forget the Doctors in Industry Fellowship, which is we're actually enrolling for the new cohort in a few months. If you're on our mailing list, you'll find it out very soon. medicfootprints.org/join our mission. And we are only after people who are serious about making change. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need to know your destination. It is about actually, I want to make a change for my life, for my future. And that is the biggest indication that we know that you're ready to go on the journey with our growing community who are doing exactly the same thing. But
Amazing.
anyway, thank you so much, Rolake.
Thank you. Amazing.